Today, we're looking at Robert Oster's Crimson. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Now, Robert Oster's Crimson is a red ink. To make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I then put the ink into a different pen for the day. I then put it into a Pilot Metropolitan with a medium nib to take my notes for this video. Now, before we get to the writing samples, let's look at the sciencey bits. And up first is the chromatography, and I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down and immediately dunk it into water. And we see that it gets some pink that moves its way up, and it starts to become a very light red. And it's got this kind of yellow across the top, and I don't want to call it quite a highlighter yellow because it's not really that bright. The one on the right I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water. And the line across the bottom, instead of just being pink, it's a red line. And pink pushes up and it becomes red with that yellow across the top. So the major difference is it looks like there's a little bit that might hold on. Resistance tests are done to see how well this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it might be to clean from your pens. I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, we see that the second H definitely blooms out. It starts to become fuzzy, and my concern there is on a lot of writing that I might lose something important. So this is not an ink that I would use in a note-taking situation for that reason. Which is not surprising when we look at what happens with water. That drop of water in only 30 seconds is completely removing the ink from the page. We can start to see a couple of the dots from the Rhodia dot pad. Pen flush removes just as much of the ink. We really don't see more of it coming up. We just see more of the darker ink gone, leaving that light pink behind. It also makes me feel, since it's not doing a lot more, that water is all that would be needed to remove this from your pen. Bleach, as would be expected, is completely removing it from the paper. Again, water is all that you would need to clean this from your pen. For the inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Robert Oster's Crimson has a viscosity of 2.3, making it a very normal viscosity, or flow. To find my average dry time, I use my writing samples done with an extra fine and medium nib on Clairefontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. For the inks I've tested, I have found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Robert Oster's Crimson has an average dry time of 12 seconds, making it a little faster drying in ink. Now, let's look at the writing samples. I picked this ink up in sample form, and to keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's look at Clairefontaine. We get no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, some light shading throughout all of it, which is very nice in helping it stand out. Very nice. The extra fine gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and definitely a ton of shading through this writing. Being a lighter tone crimson, it allows it to really come out. This is certainly much nicer than what we saw yesterday. 7 seconds to dry. The medium gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and tons of color variation, tons of shading here. We see a lot of it in Quick, in Brown, in Fox. This is fantastic in how this looks. Really, really nice. 13 seconds to dry. The extra fine and the medium scrubby both show us that we can expect color variation, and we did see it in the writing. And the smear test says you can likely recover this. So let's look at Tomoe River. Other than when the scrubby, where I put it on stupid thick, we have no bleeding. Of course, we have ghosting. The 1.1 gives us no feather, no spread, and it halos. It is haloing around the word Crimson, a little bit around Robert, quite a bit around Oster. Really, really very nice. The extra fine gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and no real color variation. I mean, I'm looking, K looks like it is a tad darker, Q looks a tad darker. So the word quick gives me color variation, but I don't see it anywhere else in the writing. 11 seconds to dry. The medium gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and lost color, lost shading. It's lost here. 20 seconds to dry. Now the scrubby, the extra fine says we should get some color variation, and we got it in one word. Other than that, there was no shading. So yes, it was sort of there, but not really. The medium says we get no color variation, and we didn't. The smear, you can't recover it because you wrote it on Tomoe River paper. So I looked to Rhodia, where we get no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and no shade. No shade with this 1.1. Not on this paper. It's the coating, I think, is just preventing it from happening. The extra fine gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and light shading throughout the writing. Light shading. It definitely goes from a little darker to a little lighter back, like on the word brown. Starts darker, gets lighter, gets darker again on the N. Fox starts light, gets heavy on the X, jumps. We start light, the right side of the U gets dark, it gets light again, the P gets dark. Great. 6 seconds to dry. Now the medium gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and we lost the shading entirely. 12 seconds to dry. And so I tried it with the Pilot Metropolitan medium. Now that's more of a fine, more of a Western fine. But with the Pilot Metropolitan medium, to take my notes, I'm not getting any shading there. So here I had shading on the extra fine. Here I'm not getting any of it. If you're going to want shading, because there is no sheen for this ink, but if you're going to want shading to come through, you're really going to have to hunt out the best pen for it. The scrubby on the extra fine shows us we're going to get some color variation, and we do. The medium shows no color variation, and we didn't. The smear test says you can likely recover it. So I decided to test this on some different tone paper to see what happens. And the yellow Rhodia gives us no bleeding, no ghosting. And to look at the color difference, we have none. We have no color difference. We have no behavior difference at all in its shading or any of that. It's the same tone. So this is a strong color. The 1.1 gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, sheen, or shade. The extra fine gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and we still get shade. We get the exact same kind of shade. Quick, starts dark, gets light, gets dark again. Brown starts dark and gets light. Over, starts light, gets darker, gets lighter again. So it gives us some lovely shading in the extra fine at 6 seconds to dry. And the medium, no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. 11 seconds to dry. The scrubby for the extra fine shows us we should get color variation, and we did. The scrubby for the medium says we don't get any color variation, and we didn't. The smear test says we should be able to recover this, so I expect we would. So being a nice red ink, it's a nice color. It's not my preference of reds, but it's a nice color. This one looks much better. So I decided to test it on some 20-pound copy paper because with teaching and grading, how would this hold up? Well, it bleeds, but it doesn't bleed to the page underneath, even with that with the medium, and tons of ghosting. So the medium that I wrote the top with, we definitely get spread, a lot of spread. We get feathering all over, but it's tiny feathering. It's not too distracting, especially if you're handing this to someone that doesn't really have the experience with fountain pens. They're not going to see it and be distracted by it. Only you, as the fountain pen user, will be distracted by all of that feathering. With the extra fine, we have spread, we have feather, we have no halo, no shade, no sheen, 1 second to dry. The scrubby tells us we get no color variation. We didn't, but we do not smear at all. At 1 second to dry, it goes straight into the paper, and it's over. And that's all that I have for the writing sample. Instead of finding inks that look like Robert Oster's Crimson, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. I've chosen Robert Oster's Fire and Ice because it is a great blue color. Before I give my opinion on this ink, I would ask, if you've enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up And if it's your first time here, I would invite you to subscribe. So what do I think of Robert Oster's Crimson? As a lighter red, it allows for some very nice shading throughout the writing, which is something that I truly do appreciate. It is a very nice crimson, especially considering that crimson is not normally the red that I would go for. Thanks for watching.